Well, I've finally done it. I broke down and I watched the first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. And man, do I wish that I hadn't. Before I get into it, though, please like the video, share with this on your social media networking, and please do subscribe to the channel. That's a way for a new content creator for myself to be able to reach more people and to get more traction in the YouTube algorithms. And now on to talking about Star Trek Lower Decks. When I think about Star Trek, one of the things that I think about is a history of optimism and adventure, exploration. Took itself seriously, but let comedy come in on occasion in order to lighten the mood when necessary. The key piece about Star Trek is the episodic nature of the television show, as well as the fact that it really was about the science. At the end of the day, Star Trek was, for the sci-fi genre, the intellectual option on television and in the movie screens as well. As compared to Star Wars, which is really more of your sci-fantasy action, Star Trek was always supposed to be a very different brand whose appeal and absolute strength was in the intellectualism. It was the science behind what they were doing. It was a higher level of storytelling for a totally different audience. That's one of the reasons why over the years there was a lot of, for lack of a better word, bumping of heads among the fandoms of Star Wars and Star Trek. Guys like me, we enjoyed both, but there were a lot of people who would say that they were Trekkies, and there's a lot of people who say that they were into Star Wars. And in many cases, never the twain shall meet. So, you're thinking about making an animated Star Trek show, a comedy. Where do you start with that? How does that process come about? If you're a thoughtful creator, you might start with these premises.
Part of what you inherit when you're going to see Star Wars now is this whole history, because the stories have been told for decades. And this is something I learned from over at Marvel and working with Kevin Feige, is you always want to keep the core fans in mind, because they've been the ones that have been keeping the torch lit for many, many years. But these are also stories for young people and for new audiences. These are myths. And so you're really telling two stories at once. You're telling the story for the people who are fresh eyes, and you're telling the story for the people who've been there with the property and with the stories and the characters for so many years, and make sure that you're honoring them as well.
But this is Alex Kurtzman we're talking about. So, no, you don't get that type of reverence for the history of the franchise when you're looking at putting this show together. Star Trek Lower Decks is the brainchild of Alex Kurtzman and his chief lackeys, such as Michael Chabon. To give you an idea of the mindset that these people have when they're putting together these desecrations of our myths, let's look at a little interview that Chabon did with Variety when discussing Picard earlier this year. Chabon was asked if he knew that there would be some things that he did that would test some boundaries for fans, and his response was rather illuminating. Sure, to the extent that I was aware of the kind of toxic fandom, the anti-SJW, sad little corner of fandom, you just disregard that. Sometimes you're motivated to have things simply because it's possibly going to piss off or provoke people. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, those are your creatives behind this absolute abortion of a show, Star Trek Lower Decks. Lower Decks is a show that was made for nobody. If it was made for anybody, it definitely wasn't Star Trek fans. Just like every other production that we get from Alex Kurtzman, nothing about this is Star Trek. Nothing about it feels, looks, or even makes me believe that this is part of the Trek universe. We open up the scene with Ensign Mariner absolutely berating another ensign, Boimler, for having ambition and seeing himself in advancement and perhaps someday being in a captain's chair. And so what does she do about that? She assaults him, beats him over the head, and makes fun of him because he's an ambitious Starfleet officer, which in many ways he embodies the old school Trek fan in that sense. He wants to see himself advance, and he sees himself as a part of a higher calling within Starfleet, which of course is treated as just the dumb, stupid male who can't get anything right. While we have Ensign Mariner, who's the rule breaker, and she's funky, and she's into doing things in a way that just isn't very Starfleet. You know, that's not Trek to me. It never was going to be. If we judge by the viewing figures that we can look at seeing this episode on YouTube, you might think that perhaps Star Trek Lower Decks is popular, and I'm the idiot, right? Okay, maybe I just don't get it because I've gotten old. You know, I've only grown up with the series, and it's been a part of, you know, my entertainment for virtually my entire life. You know, but hey, apparently I don't know anything, right? Well, we can take a little bit closer look at that. Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 1 has been released by CBS onto YouTube for viewing for free, initially globally, and then whoops, they figured out they didn't geo-lock it, and it's only North America again now. But this episode, the video on YouTube now has well over 2.5 million views. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But let's look at that a little bit deeper. The like to dislike ratio on the video got a little over 4,100 likes, a little over 2,200 dislikes. For a video that supposedly has had over 2.5 million views, those numbers are astronomically minuscule. Not even close to in the range of what it suggests. If you got a video with that many reactions to it, you're really looking at more like 80 to 100,000 views on the high end, and that's being generous. So 2.5 million views, where does this come from? Well, the video is getting embedded in advertising. Anytime that it scrolls at the bottom of your feed, when you see a video autoplay, whether that be on Facebook, any of those types of places that they place the ads for the YouTube videos, it's counting those as views. So, I mean, honestly, you just need to completely disregard this $2.5 million view number, which is just completely fabricated, and it's not remotely any type of indication of just how popular this show is. So let's talk a little bit more about what they did in episode 1 that was so horrible. We've got, even during the opening credits, something that to me just is just not right. The ship crashes into an ice field debris in space. It runs away from the Borg and leaves the Romulans fighting them. And it really portrays that this ship that we're going to be following is just a bunch of cowards, which is not what the general Star Trek fan wants to see. You know, I'm not sure, again, who this animation style is intended to be. The one positive that I can give to this show is that the tech and the environments do look like TNG Trek. Unlike what we see in Discovery, where the ships are nothing whatsoever like what we know Starfleet ship design to look like. I mean, at least Lower Decks does get that reasonably well done, but that's about the only positive that I can give. The officers in this series are portrayed as a bunch of dude bros. Yeah, hey, all right, what's up? I mean, it's really, they're these caricatures, particularly of aggressive, idiotic men, that is not something that represents Starfleet or Star Trek to me in any way, shape, or form. You can do a comedic approach to animation in Star Trek that does not make every single character, particularly those whom the traditional Trek fan generally looked up to, the captain of the ship, the officers, You can do this without making them fools, without making them idiots, without making them caricatures. And yep, that's the approach that good old Kurtzman takes. Because anything that represents traditional Star Trek must be belittled, it must be destroyed, it must be ignored, and it must be made to seem small. Particularly if anything related to traditional Trek has any semblance of masculinity in it. Because in Kurtzman's world, masculinity is evil and toxic. You know, I've got news for you. Men and women together make the world go round. Men and women working together are what build us forward, and that was the vision that Roddenberry had of Star Trek. When you're presenting it such that the only characters who are even modestly worth looking up to, at least I assume that's what you want out of Ensign Mariner, is, are women and every man is a fool and worthless. You are not embodying Gene's vision of Star Trek. You're destroying it. You're disrespecting it. You're treating the people who grew up with it as trash. You are treating Trek as trash, and you are absolutely defacing the great legacy that once was Star Trek. I wasn't sure if it could get worse than Discovery. Then I saw Picard. And then I didn't think it could get worse than Picard. And now I've seen Lower Decks. And one thing I've learned is that I definitely need to have lower expectations for this Kurtzman Star Trek universe. Because nothing about it is worth watching. Nothing about it is quality. Nothing about any of these programs that have Kurtzman's name on it deserve the moniker of Star Trek. Similar to what we've seen happen with Disney Star Wars in the cinematic universe, we have experienced in the Star Trek television universe. And that is a complete rejection of the past, a destruction of what we've known as what Star Trek is and what it embodied and what it could become has been just completely tossed aside in favor of agenda-driven storytelling whose main purpose is to portray men as bad, evil, and awful at the expense of anything good they could contribute. It just makes me sick, absolutely sick to watch this. And I'm disgusted with you, Alex Kurtzman. I'm disgusted with your products. I'm disgusted with you, CBS, with what you put on TV and insult me with. The only way Trek could have been saved would have been to completely abandon this Kurtzman universe, let the IP rest for a few years, and start over. Unfortunately, CBS continues to double down, and all that we have left is the star-wrecked universe. R.I.P. Star Trek, and I'll catch you on the next video. Before we go, first I want to say thank you for watching the video this long. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share with your friends on social media, and please do consider subscribing to the channel. These are the things that help a new creator like myself gain traction in the algorithm and allows the channel to grow and continue to reach more and more people. Thank you. We'll catch you on the next video.